Vanakam Dohadeva and everyone. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Binbishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And we'll attempt to share the screen. Share. Here we go. First topic. We have something new and different. Drawing on Shum. The four perspectives found in Gurudeva's Shum language. For anyone who doesn't know, Shum is the formal name of the language. Shum is the informal name of the language. It is a Na, the mystical language of meditation, revealed in Switzerland in 1968 to Gurudeva. It's often known simply as Shum and may be signified by the character Shum with a dot above it. This language comes from the inner areas of the heart of the mind and has a positive effect on the nerve system. This is, I think, the only slide that has Shum script. I thought I'd include one slide. Everything else has the Shum in English transliteration, because I think the majority of our participants don't know how to read the Shum script. Gurudeva created 12 simple meditation maps, one for each month of the year, called Mamsani. And so we wouldn't forget, along with everything else that he didn't want us to forget, he had them carved into the pillars of Yerevan Temple. Can't forget that. And this is the August Mamsani, which is on the four perspectives: Shum, If, Mulif, Simnif, and Dimfi. Gurudeva describes it in this way. This is one of our most delightful Mamsani, naming the four different focuses of consciousness. The intelligence within each of these four can and has taken lifetimes to know, to memorize, to investigate, cognize, and expand the mind into the depths which are there to be explored. But imagine this month gaining a superconscious glimpse of all four of these perspectives at one time. So we definitely need you to write something down on paper or digitally. It's a cue card to remind you the meanings of Shumif, Mulif, Simnif, and Dimfi. Because sometimes I'll use them and you won't remember what it means. So we're doing one word. Shumif equals meditation. Simnif equals science. Mulif equals philosophy. And Dimfi equals theism. It's really hard to find a one word for Dimfi, as you'll see when we talk about what it encompasses. But to me, theism is the essence of it. We're recognizing another being as greater than us and trying to relate to that being. Theism. Okay, now we'll define each one. Shumif is the perspective of awareness flowing through the mind itself being unmoved. So this is important. You are awareness traveling. So imagine going from your home to work, shopping here and there, going to school. That is the Shumi perspective. Where you're going is stationary and you are moving. Simnif perspective is the opposite. The mind is moving and the intelligence of the person observing, such as a scientist looking through a microscope into the inner workings of matter, is stationary. So you're stationary and what you're looking at is moving. Science. Mulif perspective is the way of words, the way of the scholars of philosophical intellect. Opposite is the Dimfi perspective, which is just now coming into focus on this planet through the newly found abilities of being able to communicate with Mahadevas, Devas, and beings of all kinds on other planets, such as the Pleiades in this galaxy and beyond. Something to look forward to. Those in this perspective are not aware of being the center of all things, the Shumi perspective. Nor are they aware of the world's many philosophies, the Mulif perspective. Nor are they much concerned about the nature of a drop of water, the Simnif perspective. Their minds fly high in Dimfi. So now we have the full definition. Shumif. One of four perspectives, the meditative viewpoint of being awareness flowing from one area of the inner mind to another, the mind itself being stationary. The perspective of the Shum Chief language. It is also simply called the Shum perspective. In Saiva Siddhanta, it includes the deeper meditative practices. It is Advaita, or a monistic viewpoint. There's nothing separate from you. Everything you're looking at is part of you. Monistic viewpoint. Simnif, one of four perspectives, a scientific viewpoint of looking into matter. In this perspective, the mind is moving and the intelligence of the observer is stationary. And understanding comes through observing matter and achieving insights into its behavior. Saiva Siddhanta, it includes the knowledge of Hatha Yoga, pranayamas, and the currents of the physical body. So there is a scientific component, right, in Saiva Siddhanta. We just don't think of it as science. But Hatha Yoga, pranayama, the currents of the physical body, even Ayurveda is related. Scientific approach to knowledge within Saiva Siddhanta. It can be dual, non-dual, or both, depending on the inclusiveness of the scientific theory. Mulif, one of four perspectives, the philosophical viewpoint of understanding theological, metaphysical, and psychological concepts. So we're dealing with concepts in philosophy. In Shumif, we're dealing with inner states of consciousness that we're actually experiencing. In Mulif, we're dealing about concepts about them or about anything. Simnif, we're actually studying matter in some way. And Dimfi, there's another being involved that we're focused on. Realization in Mulif is often attained simply through understanding deep philosophical concepts, which would be an intellectual realization, not a spiritual one. So that's always important to keep in mind in Gurudeva's approach. Simply knowing there's an intense inner light within us, that's philosophy. We can say, oh, it's created by the friction between odic and actinic forces. That's what it is. That's still philosophy. We have to actually experience it for it to be in the Shumif perspective. We have to see it inwardly. So we're trying for inner experiences in Shumif, not philosophical concepts. Philosophical concepts can be helpful for us getting to the spiritual experience, But if we're overly intellectual in our balance, the intellectual concepts can actually be a barrier. So we don't want to be overly intellectual and have self-created barriers to experience. Saiva Siddhanta, it includes the intellectual study of Saiva Siddhanta philosophy. It can be non-dual, dual, or both, depending on the comprehensiveness of the philosophy. And Dimfi, one of our perspectives, a metaphysical viewpoint of looking into inner and outer space. It is a perspective that acknowledges, understands, and communicates with God and gods, beings on the astral plane, people from other planets. It is here that all psychic phenomena take place. In Saiva Siddhanta, it includes the consciousness of the Devas, Mahadevas, and God Shiva experienced in the temple. So in Saiva Siddhanta, it's pretty much focused on the deities. It is Dvaita, or a dualistic viewpoint. So Dimfi can't be monistic. By its very definition, we're focused on another being. So there's two. And this is one of the confusions in Hinduism, Dimfi and Shumiv. People generally think in one or the other. They think of religion as a focus on a deity. Or they think of religion as experiencing the Atma within themselves. And they don't have the other perspective, so it can be hard to understand the other person's point of view. But they are very different perspectives. Then we get a little illustration. Gurudeva continues in this small illustration. The 6 little lines going out from the center to Simnif, Shumif, Mulif, and Dimfi represent the 7 dimensions, for the circle in the middle represents the first dimension. The large curved lines, as they relate to Shumif and Simnif, indicate a continuing out into inner space indefinitely. So those are the ones on the left and the right. You can see how the lines at the end open up. Simnif's on the left and Shumif is on the right. So both of these perspectives, the further you go in, the more you discover. But in the curve of the lines as they relate to Dimfi and Mulif, up and down, if they were to continue around, they would make a closed-in circle. You can see the limited nature of these 2 areas of the mind. And these 2 perspectives, one can only go so far within until he is swung back into outer consciousness. Notice that in Mulif and Dimfi, the 2nd and 3rd dimensions are much bigger and more pronounced than the 6th and 7th, where it's just the opposite in Shumif and Simnif. So science and meditation are alike, and philosophy and theism are alike in these qualities. I was asked the question, what science and meditation, in science you get into quantum mechanics and it starts to postulate a one underlying reality or awareness. And is that the same thing that happens in Shumif? And the answer is not generally. In other words, Simnif is giving you the fact that it exists, but the scientist isn't experiencing it. Whereas Shumif is experiencing it and not necessarily being able to describe it like the scientist would in a very precise way. So that's a bit obscure, but I put it in anyway. So I think we covered that enough. You will find when you meditate on this Mamsani that the Shumif and Simnif are companion states of consciousness and inner awareness, as are the Mulif and Dimfi, experiential perspectives of human consciousness and awareness. These 4 major perspectives of the consciousness of human beings create their major inner mind stylings. There is no relationship to ordinary life within these perspectives. Not one of them is a second or third dimensional picture. They are four names that capture and categorize consciousness into four divisions. Saivism can well name all four. A fully developed Saivite should be able to experience at will each of these four perspectives, consciously live in two, three, or more at the same time, as did the rishis of yore. So that's the point I made earlier, that all four are within Saivism, but not with equal emphasis. Science is the one that has the least emphasis, but is there. Gurudeva's commentary. These four perspectives of consciousness are complete within themselves. Each one has its obvious limitations, yet each one is an area that people are caught up in and unable to move out of. There is a fifth perspective, Di Nam If, one spiritually unfolds into, of being able to be totally in one or another of the four perspectives or all the four at once. This is to be striven for in the spiritual unfoldment Saivite meditations produce. Shankara and Vedanta is the Molif perspective. Dualistic Saivasiddhanta is the Dimthi perspective, accepting everything God's all, life, the Charya, and Kriya path. Shumi perspective is basically yoga. Simni perspective is where people ordinarily are when not in Vedanta or Siddhanta, aware of how things work scientifically. So we said this all four within Saivasiddhanta, Gurudeva's commentary. In Shum Nam meditation, the Shumi perspective of the three worlds and seven dimensions of the mind does not involve us in the knowledge of the Devas or Mahadevas who live in the inner worlds. You would be experiencing through the Shumi perspective exactly what the Devas would experience in the second and third world, were they to meditate upon the Shum concepts. Shumif is pure Advaita. So in this type of meditation, Shum, meditation with the Shumif perspective, you're never meditating on a deity, because that's not Shumif. You can meditate on the consciousness the deity holds, which is the consciousness that's within you as well, but you can't meditate on the deity as being different from you. That's against the principles. The three worlds, again, the three worlds is not an issue except as how it exists within your own soul body. When we become conscious of Devas, Mahadevas, or our personal deity, we have transferred our perspective into what is called the Dimpi perspective, which is pure Dvaitist. The Siddhanta philosophy is approached from the Mulif perspective, one that is intellectually studied. And of course, Panasana, Hatha Yoga, the knowledge of pranayamas, kalivasa, and the currents of the physical body, all relate to the Simnif, or scientific perspective. Opposite is the Dimpi perspective, which is just now coming into focus on the planet. This somehow Gurudeva repeated the material here, so skip that. Gurudeva commentary. The Dimpi perspective is very intriguing. It is definitely the path of bhakti, karma yoga, and there is always a God, deva, outer space person to be beholden to. One not need to know. Much philosophy to be in this perspective. People of all religions are here. The Dimti perspective blended together with the Mulif perspective releases the powers of philosophy and creates a monistic and pluralistic Saivasiddhanta in one person. Breaking through the barrier from the Dimti to the Mulif is easy. It does take study, coaching from an accomplished adept. When the two are blended, Vedanta and Siddhanta merge. When these two perspectives are blended with the Shumif perspective, monistic Saivasiddhanta bursts forth in all of its fullness. And when these three perspectives are blended with Simnif, monistic Saivasiddhanta can then contribute to the betterment of this generation and the generations to come. Simni perspective sees into the mechanism of growing things, what's in the earth making everything work, what's in the egg, what's in the DNA. The four perspectives and personal problems. Gurudeva commentary. To psychoanalyze your problems would be in the Mulif perspective. We're using the intellect and intellectual knowledge to solve a problem. To take them to the feet of Lord Muruga would be the Dimfi perspective, involving the grace of the deity. To move awareness away from the problem into a happier state of mind and then look back and understand the karmas involved is the Shumif perspective. So we're moving awareness from the congested, unhappy state of mind into one that's not congested or unhappy. To be injected by a psychiatrist with a chemical drug to alleviate the problem would be the Simnif perspective. Science has solved our problem. Let's take a common modern-day problem, minor depression, and look at how the problem can be solved through each of these four approaches. So I'm going to ask you to answer it before I give the answer. One at a time. We're solving the problem of minor depression. A friend of yours says, I have minor depression. What do you suggest? This is not major depression. This is minor depression, something that only lasts a couple of weeks. It's not chronic. Simnif. We just gave the answer for Simnif. I'm sure you all remember. How does Simnif solve the problem of minor depression? Of course, solves it through taking a prescription drug such as Prozac to chemically alter our mood. Science has solved it. How does Mulif solve it? Philosophy. Discussing the problem with a counselor, psychologist, or psychiatrist is a solution from the Mulif perspective. So we need to talk to a person more knowledgeable than we are in this area. Get their help in person. Dimfi perspective. How does Dimfi solve it? That one's easy. Going to the temple and placing the problem at the feet of the deity. Solution from the Dimfi perspective. And Shumif. Meditation, moving awareness into a happier state of mind. So we can solve it by any of those four ways. It's not trying to suggest one way is better than another. Definitely depends on the person and the belief structure of the person. Can't change a person's belief structure quickly. In helping a devotee, we use all four approaches. When everything is going fairly well in a devotee's life, we end up using just the Dimfi and Shumif perspectives. These two are the core of our Saiva Siddhanta philosophy, which is described as monistic theism, or a practice which emphasizes both temple worship, the theism, and meditation, the monism. So we always want to realize that we're unusual in having these two combined. Most Hindu traditions only are one. They're either Dimfi or Shumif. They're either involved in the deity or in meditation. They're not involved in both because their philosophy doesn't look at it that way, but Saiva Siddhanta, we have both. So advice relates to going to the temple and worshiping Lord Ganesha, or meditation on certain Shum concepts. I have a whole write-up on how Lord Ganesha is the best marriage counselor. So we're solving marital disputes by Deem Fee, not by Mulif going to the counselor. We're going to the deity. So I have suggestions as that you go separately, you do this, you do that, and trying to harmonize the forces through getting Lord Ganesha involved in each of the spouses. So we can go to the temple, worship Lord Ganesha, or meditation on certain Shum concepts can solve it if everything is going fairly well in a devotee's life, if they're still upbeat. However, when a devotee is somewhat discouraged, we rely on Mulif, sharing the philosophical insights of Gurudeva. For example, everything is as it should be. Whatever you face is your own self-created karma. Lean on the power of your spine. This helps them become re-inspired to the point where they are able, through the practice of temple worship and meditation, to solve their own problems again. So that was the focus when we started. We're going to have a 2-year celebration here. I think it's April 16th was our first Zoom satsang 2 years ago. So as of that point in April, about a month away, we will have had them for 104 weeks. And when we started, this was a common theme. We need to get rid of any discouragement or doubt through thinking about Gurudeva's philosophy, applying it to our lives. Get feeling positive and inspired, and then we can apply our Dimpi and our Shumif. We can utilize the temple and meditation. Sometimes Simnif advice is also given, such as how someone would benefit by exercising half an hour a day, losing weight, following a better diet, and so forth. Yes, so sometimes when someone's been sick, their pranic body is not as strong as it was, which affects everything. So walking outside for half an hour a day is very good at increasing the strength of the pranic body. So I'm hoping that some of that made sense. It's a little advanced, but it is recorded. You can go through it again. And the basic idea I'm trying to say is that there's 4 different perspectives within Saiva Siddhanta. All 4. And most people don't utilize all 4. Some people don't even believe in all 4, like theism or meditation. Someone who's totally non-spiritual, non-religious is utilizing philosophy and science. And the theism and the meditation aren't tools or perspectives that he or she uses. But they are different ways of acquiring knowledge, and all of them are contained within Saiva Siddhanta. Okay, second topic. We're back to, we finished Mauritius, all our youth, so we need a new topic. We're back to our character building workbook. 8th character quality, which is cautiousness. So, how would you define cautiousness before we give the workbook answer? An aside, which I mentioned when in appropriate situations where parents have children who are less than age 24. It's interesting, the frontal cortex, which relates to cautiousness or not taking excessive risks, isn't fully developed until age 24. So I thought it was interesting that Hinduism doesn't consider someone an adult until age 24. And I think that's part of it, is they're less prone to take risks once they've reached that point in life, which is important. Which means if you have children under age 24, you need to realize that they're still prone to taking excessive risk. It's just part of what hasn't matured or what matures last. Therefore, the Western concept, some places the idea is you're an adult at 18, other situations you're an adult when you're 21, but in Hinduism you're only an adult when you're 24. So parents need to watch over their kids with that in mind up through age 24, and at that point consider them mature. And our definition per workbook: cautiousness means being careful and wary. I cultivate cautiousness by approaching activities thoughtfully, avoiding mistakes and danger by taking into account what could go wrong. That's a nice statement. I take into account what could go wrong. Its opposite is recklessness, ignoring what could go wrong. Oh, a couple of quotes from Gurudeva. Today's world is not all that bad, but children must be taught how to live in it, what to be wary of, whom to trust, whom to befriend and marry, how to proceed in business, social life, education, career upscaling, religious life, and on into the raising of their own family. Second quote. Maybe at some time a whole bag of good apples will make a bad apple good, but so far it hasn't occurred. Until such a time, we have to be wary of a natural law of nature and live among others of virtuous character and conduct, others who share spiritual insights and seeking. And we get our three examples. First example, showing off for friends, you. Cautiousness. Take into account the potential dangers involved in the stunt. Recklessness. Give no thought to possible dangers. Second example, driving on a treacherous road, you. Cautiousness. Watch the signs carefully and slow down where indicated. Recklessness. Pay no attention to the signs and drive at a reckless speed. Third example, when a friend starts smoking cigarettes, you. Cautiousness. Educate yourself about the health consequences and persuade him to stop while he still can. Recklessness. Ignore all the medical warnings and start smoking also. That's very reckless. So, reflection. Take a moment to identify a few environments in which you could be more cautious. See if there's any environments where you're ignoring what could go wrong. Give you a second for that. And then the workbook's assignment. During these 2 weeks, assess the risks in each environment in which you find yourself and decide which need to be taken into account. Oh, that's what we have for today. Oh.